Hello, my name is Elizabeth Mary Donnie with NIM number 23019268882 in Introduction to International Trade and Business class with lecturer Roseno Aji Afandi. In the Gramsci approach, the main idea is that the upper class who often rule the country matters will use the hegemonic ideas to influence the policies to gain domination and maximum benefit over the working class. This hegemony of ideas was not accomplished through using force or coercion. Rather, the dominant class would use ideology and consciousness by manipulating media, language, culture, morality, and even history using their fashion. They do this in order the working class will think that what they are doing is something normal and beneficial for every class, rather than there is a social injustice which shapes the superstructure. The location of culture, ideology, language, morality, and intellectual variables as fundamental for the working class in its struggle to become a leading class is Gramsci's main contribution to Marxist theory. With it, the Italian intellectual wants to undermine the economic determinism of historical materialism. He believed that human being has a high degree of representation in history, in which human will and intellect played an important role as fundamental as the economy. So, how could the working class dominate the economy and take over the upper class? Here, Gramsci proposes that in order for the worker to dominate the economy, all workers have to unite with other social groups who are having the same struggle as them. Gramsci has an idea to establish a new historical bloc where one breaks the order that is established by the capitalist structure and the political and ideological superstructures on which the upper class relies on. Thus, in the words of Im Hyuk Baek, this can be interpreted as counter-hegemony, something that is not a real hegemony in strict sense, but economic, political, and ideological preparation for hegemony before overthrowing capitalism or before winning state power. Lenin was the man who led the first successful socialist revolution. His and the Bolshevik approach aims to overthrow the Tsar government to bring justice to the exploited workers from capitalist activities. However, it must be noted that most of the people in Russia are uneducated and living in rural areas instead of cities, which makes exploitation easier to be done. Contrasting with its opposing party, Mensheviks, Lenin envisioned the revolution to be a proletarian revolution instead of only a bourgeois democratic revolution that will bring socialism in the Russian Empire that is led by the Vanguard Party. This Vanguard Party is used as a tool to give the working people political consciousness, which is education and organization. Lenin also argued to the Russian lefties to not join the reform movements, as there will be only small changes. What Lenin thought was the best was a real revolution to make Russia into a better country for small workers. Another argument regarding a revolution in Russia from his book Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, he said that the capitalism would lead to monopolies, in which he explained how imperialism controlled over and exploited backward colonial regions, leaving them some prosper and some poverty. How is that?
This is because in imperialism, there is a higher profit, which means higher wages for workers in industrialized countries. Thus, these workers are not part of the exploited workers, as they were benefiting from it. Meanwhile, those in developing countries are not. So Lenin concluded with oppression, the workers outside of the core countries will be mad and start a revolution. As a result, this will create a conflict between capitalist nations, and with the revolution in Russia, Leninism and his social approach will spread to the rest of Europe.
Despite Gramsci and Lenin having similarities in their goal, which both oppose capitalism and the exploitation of workers, there are also differences between these two approaches, which is the way on how to achieve their goals of social justice. Both argued that to bring social justice, it must exert intellectual and moral leadership and make alliances and compromises with a variety of forces. Gramsci believed that the working class needs to develop their own culture because it is fundamental to the attainment of power. Thus, Gramsci called this movement a historic bloc, which formed the basis of consent to social order. Meanwhile, Lenin saw that culture was necessary to support political objectives and saw that the exploitation of the economy was not capitalist, instead, it was more imperialist. Lenin issued the October Manifesto, called the Duma, which laid the groundwork for the protection of civil rights, the creation of constitution, and the establishment of parliament.